I think the first thing to say is that we don't believe that they're mutually exclusive. If you take Siemens as a point in case, that in 2010 we had revenue in the sustainability area of about 28 billion, and the intention is to grow that significantly in the years to come. So it presents a lot of opportunities out there. We believe that it would be at our peril not to take this into account. If you look at the opportunities associated with energy and renewables, that the country today imports 90% of its hydrocarbon raw material, which is equivalent to about 6 billion. So there's a 6 billion budget there that we should be able to access and drive the economy here internally rather than import these energy sources. We also carried out a study about 2 years ago looking at the impact of high oil prices. And we believe that because of Ireland's trading and with the fact that we're a very small open economy, that we would have a significant negative impact if oil prices peak going forward. We believe that up to 7.5% of the GDP could be impacted by this. So I believe to say that you have to fix the economy without the environment is incorrect. You have to deal with one related to the other. Yes, I certainly see it that way. I think one of the major global trends that we've come across is urbanisation. And I believe in 2009, for the first time, more than 50% of the global population actually lived in cities. And we believe that in the years to come that this could go to 60-65%. So that changed the demographics of everything. And also you've got cities that currently account for about 75% of the energy consumption of any individual country. And of that 75%, the cities then are responsible for 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So again, you can see that there's massive potential to make changes in concentrated areas. The main challenge is to take into account sustainability when we're planning for the growth of the cities. Again, we break this into three separate areas. We would look at this under the headings of energy management, the heading of building, and the heading of transport. If we look at energy first, because that's probably the most obvious one to start with, for every kilowatt hour that we move across to renewable energy, there's a direct saving in terms of CO2 output. 90% of our energy today is fossil driven. So we believe that by moving across to the targets in terms of energy renewability of 40% in terms of recycle, will be the first significant step in that. Secondly, we need to work on what we call the demand side. We need to look at how we can reduce the actual consumption or the actual demand for the energy. And one of the biggest ways of doing this is through buildings. As we said earlier, cities are responsible for about 75% of the total energy consumption, and of that about 40% is related to buildings. So if you can go out and retrofit or even design going forward, so we've got to remember we've got an installed base, if you like, and the future developments. So if you take the installed base, by retrofitting, there's significant savings can be had in terms of energy, in terms of heating, in terms of light, smart buildings, and the management thereof. And then the final area that we would see is in transportation. And transportation, I see it again as twofold. We have what we call the hardware of it. We have the vehicles themselves. So we have the trains, the electrification, the cars, the hybrid vehicles. But you also have a system, and Dublin has been probably a good case in bus lanes, where you've got to make the public transport more attractive to the individuals. And then we go back to the planning element of this. As we go forward in time, developing new buildings, but also the spatial planning, you need to look at the density issues that you've got there. And that all has to roll in to allow us to have an optimum in terms of transport, which will impact on the energy consumption and the sustainability of our city going forward. I think that offers a massive potential for Ireland in many facets. If we look at from a study that we carried out in 2009, the energy CO2 output per individual here in the city was about 9.7 tonnes. This was well in excess of the European average of about 4.5. So I think that there's a lot of room for us to manoeuvre in that. The impacts of us not reaching Kyoto and our CO2 targets are directly financial. There will be European penalties that we have to pay for it. And based on the information that we have today, the EPA believes that up to about 2012 we will reach the current targets, but that has maybe the side effect of the economic slowdown. The challenge will be that in order for us to meet our fiscal targets as a country, we need to drive to growth. And unless we do something now, the growth will automatically bring additional challenges around the CO2. And again, the EPA feel that by 2016, with the growth targets that the country has, we will be in jeopardy of not meeting these targets set for 2020, which will directly lead to penalties from the EU. I think that I would see job creation in twofolds. I would see in the initial transition phase that where we talked about the retrofitting of buildings, that there will be massive employment in that area, and that'll be at multiple levels. You'll have the construction element, you'll have project management, you'll probably have finance, and engineering skills. So in that phase, there will be direct employment immediately. I think that the longer term phase, or if you like, the sustainable element is that you then have created an environment which should attract people to come and work here in the country. And that may be multinationals, but would also be something that we would like to have an environment where we would have startup. And I think it's to try and link this overall picture where we get the right balance in terms of R&D, where we get the right balance in terms of infrastructure, where we have possibly an entrepreneurial vibe around the city. And I think the critical area is that if you look at the statistics that show cities that score highest in the Green Cities Index tend to score very highly in the quality of living. So if you get the balance right, you will attract people to your city, and they will bring with them the high skills, the high value jobs. I think that's what Ireland needs going forward, or Dublin particularly.